Welcome to Financial Strategies with Andrew Agemy in Connecticut and Daniel Agemy in Colorado.
Albert Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. But is it? Is compound interest really the eighth wonder of the world? Join us today for Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. I'm Andrew Agemy.
And I'm Daniel Agemy, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. AAA, I think there's more in that quote from Albert Einstein. There's a bit more to the story.
There's a bit more indeed. Yeah, he says, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. Crazy, right? And he also says the strongest force in the universe is compound interest. Boy, you think he'd like compound interest? I do.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully today we can explain what that means, because I have had so many conversations with people lately that they don't really understand what interest is, because it's been 12, 15 years since you've been able to earn interest,
right,
without doing crazy things. And then secondly, the compounding part, people really do not understand, and how if it's compounding monthly or annually or the faster or daily, the faster it can be paid, the faster it compounds. Mm-hmm. And this is a huge thing people need to know, because it can make all the difference in the world to someone's retirement or to someone's savings.
You're exactly right. And like you said, Daniel, it's been so long since people have gotten any kind of interest. They sometimes forget how it works, and if they even knew how to work to start with. There's the rule of 72s, which is a situation that is for compounding interest. It says, because of compounding interest, if you got 7% on your money and you divide it into 72, that you have a little over 10. So that means 10 years, your money would double in 10 years because of compounding. But if you have a 7% simple interest, it's a whole nother thing, right? It's gonna take you a lot longer, probably going to take you 12, 14 years or something like that before you have that, double your money from that standpoint. Actually, I think that would be actually more like 16 years in that example before you actually had double the money. So it's huge, right? You're getting double the money in half the time as getting simple interest. Simple interest is the idea where, if you have $100,000, you make 5% on it, you get $5,000. Next year, you get $5,000. Next year, you get $5,000. Compound interest is the idea you have $100,000, you get $5,000. Now, the next year, it compounds, that 5% compounds. So instead of having 110, you have maybe $111,000. And then the following year, instead of having 116, you have 100 and maybe 16.5 or 17,000, something like that. And it continues to grow from that standpoint. That's why Albert Einstein said it's the eighth wonder of the world, because what it does is kind of magically makes your money increase. But it's an old-fashioned thing, like he brought out, Daniel.
Yeah.
People got enamored with the market and forgot about compound interest.
Yeah. And when you have companies, if you have a fund or you have a company, the goal is that the manager of that fund or those companies are compounding the interest or the growth internally. So when you look at a growth company, you would want to see it compounding at 40 or 50% internally. Right?
Right.
Not buying back a lot of their stock and driving the price up. That's not compounding. That's just speculation.
Right.
But if you're not picking a company like that, or you don't want to be picking these companies, or you don't want to be picking a fund manager, because there's I can't imagine how many fund managers are, Is it tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? I maybe even more. And you don't want to do that because you don't know who is going to compound that. Then what you can do is you can get investments that just compound for you.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, and why that's so important to be able to look at that and talk about that. So, you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy, and we're glad to have you join us today because people don't know what people don't know. And how are you going to know unless you're educated? And that's what we have this show is all about, is educating people to be able to make smart decisions, to be educated and make smart decisions from that standpoint. So, we have a paper that we'd love to give you today that goes along with the show to help educate you further. It's called Investing for Income in the Stock Market. Now, there's various ways you can invest in the stock market. There's smart ways to invest in the smart stock market. There's stupid ways, ignorant ways to invest in the stock market. And this paper will help you understand a little bit in regard to the intelligent ways, in regard to compounding, and how do you be able to use the stock market for you so that you can be able to move ahead when the market moves ahead. So you can have it for free by calling 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616 for your free copy, no obligation. Call now. Daniel, well, you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is compound interest really the eighth wonder of the world? Daniel, as we're talking about that, and, when, like you said earlier, people don't know about it necessarily because it's been a lot of years, 15 years or something, since people had any kind of making any kind of interest. And, when I think about that, I think about how, a lot of young people today, they don't even know what a CD is, a certificate of deposit is. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised. A lot of people listening to our show maybe even forgot what CDs are, right?
or money markets. I was talking to a guy yesterday or the day before, and he said, "What is a money market?" Because it's just been so long since they have paid anything.
Right. Exactly. And, because people aren't, and it's not that they're stupid or anything like that or uneducated. It's just that, people are involved in their daily lives doing what's important to them. They're not in it like you and I are, right? Every day, being educated every day, learning new things every day, helping people to compound their money every day, these kinds of things. And, to you and I, it's old hat. We've retired virtually 1,000 times over through our clients, and right, or vicariously through our clients. And, so with that, it's a whole different thing. So that's why we need to take some time here and be able to help people understand this from a different perspective, right? And I'm wondering about talking about the compounding versus the speculation that we had talked about as we were preparing the show. Are we ready to go into that? Tell people understand that at this point, Daniel? Or
I liked your story earlier, but I don't think you finished it off, which was, you were talking about simple interest versus compounding interest. So if you earned 10%, right? Simple interest, or you earned 7.2%. Who wants 7.2 compounded compared to 10% simple? And if we look at those, you have $100,000 with both in 10 years. Mm-hmm. The simple interest, you have $200,000. Pretty good, right?
Right.
The 7.2, you have $200,000 in 10 years. Exactly the same in 10 years.
Right.
Now, if we go another 10 years with the 10% simple, you've got $300,000.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Right.
The 7.2 compounded, you have $400,000. Now, hopefully, without visualizations, people got that in their head. But in the 20 years, right, with the 7.2, you have $100,000 more than the 10% simple. And that's why Einstein was saying that compounding interest is so magical, because that just keeps going. And now when we start talking about volatility and you start bringing volatility into that equation with compounding, it gets even crazier.
Yeah. Very good point. And that volatility is something that can help well. And, everybody wants more money, but they don't always get all the ins and outs of how to get money. And that's what way we're trying to bring across to people, that compounding interest is a significant way to make money. And typically it reduces your risk compared to, other people that are looking more for speculation. It does. And not typically, it just does more than reduce your risk as opposed to speculation. So, let's go into that a little bit. if you're ready.
Yeah, so we have been like since the Fed got onto this rate hiking cycle, we have been uh, shouting from the mountaintops. We have been imploring people to look at their portfolios, reduce the risk, and switch to a model that pays you, right?
Right.
When we talk about an investment, there's speculation, which a lot of people call investment, and there's investment. And how do we define that? Well, the speculation is you hope that in the future it will be more valuable than today. That's buying a house in LA and letting it sit there, right? You hope that in the future it will be worth more. An investment is you're buying a house in Ohio and you're renting it out, right? You know you're getting paid. You're not really expecting the value of the house to go up, but the income is a huge number compared to what you invested into the house because
Right.
rents in Ohio are a big number compared to your mortgage, right?
Right.
The real estate in LA is so much, you're just hoping that it will be more valuable. Now, if a earthquake comes and destroys your house or your land, like that was the speculation you got involved with, right?
Right. Right.
It could be the same thing with land. You buy a piece of raw land because you think that the highway is going to come in, they're going to buy it for you for more money. Or you buy a piece of land and you plant blueberries on it and
Right.
you're earning income from selling those blueberries, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Now
So,
you can still get the speculative growth with that blueberry land because the highway could still come in and pay you more money for that thing. You might not want to because you love all the income you're getting from the blueberries, but when you invest in an investment, not in a speculation, you can end up with both. When you invest in speculation, and we're defining speculation as not necessarily aggressive because a lot of people speculate in stuff where they're only going to earn 9% averaged for 150 years. But
yeah.
it's a speculation. You have 50% drawdowns to get that. That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It is. Well, we're going to need to take a break, Daniel. So let's come back and start off, talking about that because I think that's important for you able for people to understand speculation versus compounding. And with that, Albert Einstein says, "Hey, who understands it, it doesn't understand it, pays interest, and those that do understand it receive it." And I'd rather be on the receiving end of that myself. And let's just turn and listen in to us, or you listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. And because people don't know what people don't know, today's topic is compound interest really the eighth wonder of the world? Well, we have a book that we'd love to give you to be able to help you understand this a little bit more closely and thoroughly. It's written by a good friend of ours, David Scranton, with a bunch of alphabet soup after his name. Return on Principle: The 7 Values to Help Protect Your Money in Good Times and Bad. Love to put this in your hand. Easy read book. I think you'll enjoy it. Be able to understand how to compound your money, how to make your money do things that normally doesn't do. And you can have this for free to the next first time 5 callers at 800-725-7616. 800-725-7616. There's operators right now that be able to receive your call to get this book for first time, for next 5 first-time callers, 800-725-7616. Return on Principle. Ask for it. And we'll be right back after this.
This is Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy.
1981. I was a senior in college, and I had a good bit of money, $10,000 at the time. It was enough money to more than buy a Volkswagen Rabbit at the time. Rabbit was going to cost me about $8,500, a diesel Rabbit, which I was looking at buying. And so today, what is that, like $40,000 vehicle probably today? So, but I needed to know what I do. I decided wasn't going to buy a car because when you can increase your standard of living, when you get money, or you can increase your net worth. I decided I wanted to increase my net worth. So, I didn't know a lot about money at that time. It was before I really started investing in anything, or studying any of this stuff. And my brother, my 12-year senior, who's also father-like figure to me, I asked him, what should I do with this money? And so he turned me on to, well, Andrew, you can invest it in these mutual funds, or you can invest it in a money market. And so he said, like he usually did, he was great with this. He didn't give me a fish. He would teach me how to fish. He said, okay, here's the basics. Now go study it. So then I studied it, and, I saw two different things, right? So the mutual funds at that point, looking at and I didn't have the analytical skills that I do today. I still have good analytical skills, but not the same kind of things when it comes to money. But I looked at the mutual funds, and I saw it didn't take a rocket scientist to recognize that, well, this was speculation. I don't know what I'm going to get if I invest in these mutual funds. If I look at the past returns on these mutual funds in the past year or so have done worse than the money market accounts. Now, the money market accounts, I realized, that are paying interest. And at the time, they were paying about 17% interest. And I said, but this interest I can depend upon. And this interest will compound every year. I don't know what I'm going to get with the stock market. I'm just going to have to hope if I speculate and invest in the stock market. But if I invest in this money market account, which then the money market account's kind of like a checking account paying interest as opposed to being invested in the stock market. The company's taking their money and, your money, and they're buying various kinds of short-term bonds and such to be able to create liquid money just like the bank does. But it's not insured, but I could get 17%. So to me, that risk was worth the reward. I'm Andrew Agemy.
And I'm Daniel Agemy, and you're listening to Financial Strategies. Today we're talking about, is compounding interest still the eighth wonder of the world? And AAA, I don't think that we can get those type of returns in money markets today, but 5.25 still sounds pretty good.
Well, that's right, Dan. It's been a lot of years, right? I think it was 2008, 2009, where money markets were in the vicinity between 4 or 5%. Prior to that, came down with the financial crisis to basically nothing, and has been sitting at basically nothing for the past 15 years. And, this past year or so, the interest rates started coming up. So now, then that's why we're having this show. We did a show similar to this years ago, right? But it was a whole different thing. Today, when we're talking about it and trying to help people to bring back those thoughts that are in the back of their minds from yesteryear, from decades ago, about how interest works and how compounding works and how you can double your money by compounding. And compounding is a different thing than speculation. And many times, in the 80s and 90s, people got enamored with the stock market, started putting their money in the market and speculating. And it was a speculation that paid off in the 80s and 90s because, it was nothing to do 15% a year on your money by just having it in the market in the 80s and 90s. But then the 2000s came, and we don't know. Yes, in some years you can make some money, but it also goes the other way. And on average, you're doing okay, but averages fool us. Average is foolish. It's kind of like, Daniel, I always talk about how, if you and I are, I say to people, well, my son Daniel and I, we run an average of, 10 miles a week each. And I said, really, Andrew, but, you don't look like you're a runner. I said, well, actually, I sit on the couch and eat potato chips while he runs, and he runs 20 miles a week. So on average, we're doing 10 miles a week for each. So, averages fool us, right? But compounding is not an average. What people are looking at when they're looking at their 401ks and that kind of thing are averages, and the averages can fool us. Like what we always talk about, the 6-foot tall man that drowned on 4 foot on average water, because he happened to go in the water at a place that was over his head and he drowned, right? And that's what happens with investments too. But when you're compounding interest, it's compounding and you don't have to worry about that. So you lower your risk substantially and not get much worse return, right? Like earlier, Daniel, you talked about 9% average, 150-year average of 9% when you could get an 8% return average on preferreds. Wow. But the risk level is 50% less or more. So Crazy. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is compound interest the eighth wonder of the world? Really? Is it really the eighth wonder? Well, we have a paper that we want to give you to help you to be able to understand some of these things. And I'm talking a lot. Daniel hasn't had a chance to talk, I know, but we'll be getting to Daniel. It's called investing for income in the stock market. We'd love to be able to put this in your hand and for free by calling us at 800-725-7616, 800-725-7616. Call now. They're operators on call. You listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is compound interest really the eighth wonder of the world? Talk, Daniel, talk.
So when we are talking about, compounding interest versus growth, or what I like to say speculation, because, when we look at the equation, TR equals I plus G, which is total return is made up of two things, income and growth. And a growth can turn into a loss, or a growth can turn into nothing. It can just be flat. And, one example, there's plenty of examples of this, but one example recently is I have heard since, 2020, so much about Tesla, how great of a company this is. And great company does not equal great investment. I like them when they were a bad company. I like them when they were, and no one wanted. You remember we had one client who you and I twisted their arm to buy Tesla. He did not even want his wife to touch Tesla. He did not want anything to do with it. And I think they did 18 or 20x on that because everyone hated it at the time. They hated it, and it was a bad company, but it was a good investment.
Yeah. Wow.
But if we look at Tesla now, if we look at it from 2020, about November of 2020 till today, it's gone up and it's gone down and it's gone up and it's gone down. And if you were a trader, maybe you made some good money. But if you were an investor, you're flat. Mm-hmm. Right? So 3 years, 3 years, just over 3 years of nothing.
Right. Unless you sold it. Yeah. It's nothing.
Now we're talking about a good company, but a bad investment in that situation. Exactly. Now, if you had compounded, you had put that in something that could compound your returns. Mm-hmm. It's like you have babies that have babies that have babies that have babies, right? And pretty soon you have this huge family. That's what you want to do with your money. That's what compounding is like. Yeah. It's not just like one person that 90 years later is still one person, but now they got this big family. They're 90 and they got this big family with all the different personalities and all the fun and all the, all the different lives, right?
That's right.
That's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about compound interest.
Oh, that's a good example, Daniel. Right. And if when you talk about it, I was just thinking about that the other day. I remember I think it was like 1971, I was in this big class at school and these people were talking to us about how we each needed to have two kids because the world was overpopulated. And, if we each have two kids, then when you die, the two kids will take over for you kind of thing. And, I remember hearing that. And as time went on, I really got, as Jesus said, you shall know the truth shall set you free. And I recognized how false that is, that the world is not, overpopulated. All the people in the world, you can put them within the circumference of Jacksonville, Florida. Granted, they won't have much room, but that's crazy, right? But anyway, the point is, if you have three kids, and it compounds, right? Then they each have three kids, and they each have three or four kids or five kids, and they each, right? And that's where you get the multiplication happening, and that's where, your mother and I, Daniel, believed in, that we wanted as many blessings as God would give us. He gave us 8. He said 8 is enough. So that's good. And now I got 8 grandkids, and I hope he doesn't say 8 is enough grandkids. So anyway, but that's a great analogy. That's a great thing with that. But one of the things, there was something I wanted to say and I forgot what it was, man. Oh, well, I'll shut up. I know what it was. Daniel, you talked about 20x. You talk about this couple, and maybe they made 18 or 20x on that. Okay. And just, some of the people in listening to us don't know what you mean when you say 20x. I know it means 20 times is what it means, but give an example of what that dollar amount looks like.
So if you had $1, now you have $20.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you had $10,000, you have 200.
Yeah.
$200,000, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
That's huge. And
so
this is
we're not talking about speculation today, but
right.
That when you take a speculation, that's the kind of returns. I mean, that's a really good one. Okay. It doesn't have to be quite that good, but you shouldn't, if you have 50% drawdown potential, like, is 9% averaged good enough for you? Like, when you get that type of return, you could take the next 20 years off and still be, not invest for 20 years and still be.
Right.
So I would not suggest you do your whole portfolio like that, but you don't need to do your whole portfolio like that.
Right.
When you find, and you don't need to be invested. You can just sit back and compound like we're talking about. And then when you see these type of opportunities, you pick a certain amount and you put it into that. And if you're wrong, it doesn't change your retirement. But if you're right, it turns that 10,000 into the 200,000 or whatever that is. And that makes a difference to your retirement.
Right. Exactly. And the point is that the typical speculation that people are involved with today doesn't give them the risk that they're putting forth, doesn't give them the reward that is worth the risk. But with less risk and compounding interest, the reward is not that far off what most people are doing today. But the key thing is knowing what compound interest can do for you and the benefits of compound interest. And we're going to come back after break and we're going to discuss the benefits of compounding interest and how it can help you in our listening audience. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we have a book that we'd love to give you. You listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy because people don't know what people don't know. And how are you going to know unless somebody tells you? So we're here to educate you and help you understand so that you can make smart financial decisions. Well, we have this book we want to give you to help you learn how to do that more. It's called Return on Principle. And Return on Principle is an easy read book that will be giving you, it's a play on words. And glad to put this in your hands so that you can learn more, so be able to make those smart decisions. Have it for free by calling us at 800-725-7616 for the next 5 first-time callers. 800-725-7616. Call now.
This is Financial Strategy with Andrew and Daniel Agemy.
AAA, I had somebody send something across my desk the other day, and it sounded on paper pretty nice. 10% returns for 5 years, guaranteed.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Sounds nice, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. These are bonds. You and I are always talking about bonds. It's great. But there's a good investment or a good company or a bad company doesn't always equal a good investment or a bad investment, right? There's more to it. I'm Daniel Agemy.
And I'm Andrew Agemy. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy, because people don't know. Today's topic is compounding interest really the eighth wonder of the world? Daniel, just because you're getting a lot of money and you're offered a lot of money doesn't mean it's a good investment. And I recognize that because I had somebody come to me about 25 years ago that said, hey, Andrew, I can get this. I forget what the interest rate was. This phenomenal rate of return, and it's guaranteed for this period of time. I said, I don't know how they're doing it, but it doesn't fit financial principles. Good, sound financial principles don't do it. They went ahead and did it. It was a Ponzi scheme. So tell us about what you're talking about.
Yeah, so these people, it sounds great. A bond that's paying 10% interest. The company's guaranteeing it. Well, when you looked at it, first off, the company could call it whenever they want. So if they do well, then they will buy it back. And you won't earn 10% for 5 years, right?
Yeah, smoke and mirrors. Okay.
But it's a startup. It's a really weak, tiny company. It's a speculative thing in AI. The likelihood of them making it 5 years is not very high. If you invest in a company like that, you want to buy the equity, not their bond. Because if they do bad, the most you can lose is everything. If they
Yeah.
do well, you could do multiples and multiples, right? Now,
Right.
not specifically that company, but with startups, you typically want more upside than 10% because you're taking on a lot of risk.
Extra
That is like
risk,
going to the
speculation.
casino
Yeah.
and saying, putting all your money on the table, you could lose it all for 10%. Who is going to make that bet?
No, nobody in their
Not
right
me.
mind.
Right?
Right.
So just because it's paying interest or just because they're saying that it's compounding does not make it a good investment, because you need to look, it's guaranteed by that company. But if the company goes away, then all you got, they don't have assets, they don't have anything, right? The whole point of investing in a bond is it's guaranteed by that company. And you want the company to be strong enough that if there's a problem, even in bankruptcy, you get close to your money back, or
Right.
you get your money back, because
Right.
the bondholders become the owner of the company when they go through restructuring. And
Right.
hopefully they have enough plants, equipment, things, assets
Right.
that you can get your money back or close to your money.
Right.
With a company like this, they have nothing. And so you could lose it all except whatever you collected in interest. And if they do
Yeah.
good, they'll just buy it back from you and you'll collect, your 10% for 1 year, which does not make a especially great investment.
No. 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 But that's terrible, right? And then I promised our listening audience, before we went to break, that we are going to come back and talk about how compounding interest can help people. And there's a variety of ways that happens, right, Daniel? That when there's volatility in the market and with a flat market and just all kinds of things. Where should we start on that?
Well, would you rather make, 6% interest flat? You just make 6%, you got no volatility. Or would you rather make, let's say 10% with some volatility to it?
Well, I would like the 10% with volatility.
Yeah, and it might not sound like that much more, but we can get into kind of some of these numbers and see what kind of difference it makes over a long period of time, that difference in the 4%. And when we're talking about that, typically, especially kind of income investors tend to not want to see their account fluctuate.
Right.
And I can understand that. But compounding interest, when you're talking about it compounding, it paying you, an investment that pays you, when there's volatility, it can multiply and it can increase the returns exponentially, even by multiples, depending how long you're talking about investing for. Now, if you want the 6% without any, I think right now you're in luck, because I think there is some stuff right now that actually would pay you close to, 5.8 to 6%, right? We've seen
Right.
some of this stuff
Yeah.
where there's
Right.
no volatility to come for it, and it compounds tax free, because or not tax free, but tax deferred,
Right.
which can make a big, big difference. If you're talking about a CD and you're earning the interest and you have to pay taxes on it, compared
Right.
to if that's growing tax deferred.
Right.
So there is some stuff like that, but we're more interested in looking at the stuff that you have a larger upside and seeing how that can benefit you, especially over an investing life period.
Right.
Right?
Right. 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 And you're talking about how we could get maybe 5.8, 6% on a simple aspect where we have a lot of clients that are pushing 8 to like 10, like
Yeah.
you say, that have a little bit more volatility to it, but they're getting more, and in a long time that it will work for them too. And I like to look at it. Well, let me do our ID here, then I'll come back and I'm going to talk about chickens and the egg. So you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew Daniel, because people don't know what people don't know. Glad to have you join us for today. And we're talking about compounding interest, is it really the eighth wonder of the world, like Albert Einstein says? Well, we have a paper that we'd love to put in your hand that help you understand it a little bit differently than what we're talking about here today. It's called Passive Income. And you can have your free copy of this by calling us at 800-725-7616. It's a paper we put together for this show, be able to help you understand more thoroughly how compound interest works a little bit. And you can have that for free. 800-725-7616. Financial Strategies. Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is compound interest really the eighth wonder of the world? So here's how compound interest works in the way I say it to people, to the average Joe kind of thing, so to speak, with, when you buy chickens and, and when you eat in retirement, you're going to need to eat in retirement. And unfortunately, it's a foul thing. So you're going to eat, chicken, or you're going to eat roosters, right? And if you're going for speculation, you're eating roosters. And the problem with eating roosters is you can run out of roosters. But if you buy chickens and only eat the eggs, you'll always have eggs. It's a renewable resource. Those eggs, then, if you don't need the eggs, what we do is we take the eggs, we buy more chickens. And when we buy more chickens, what do we get, Daniel?
More eggs.
More eggs. But here's where the compounding comes in. You see, if things go down and the bond market, the fixed income market goes down like it did during COVID, the chickens get skinnier, but they're still laying the same amount of eggs. So the chickens that we buy with those eggs that are being laid are now skinny chickens, but they're on steroids. So instead of getting a 4 or 5, 6%, 7% egg, now we're getting the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% egg, and the chicken will go from being a skinny chicken to a large chicken. So we'll get growth, the old fashioned, we'll get growth from that standpoint. So from all of that compounds. And so by the time you go down the road, I was just looking at one of our clients' accounts going back when they started with us 3 years ago. And they have averaged 8% every year over the past, actually a little bit over 8% every year for the past 3 years of their eggs. That's ahead of inflation for those 3 years. And so and when you were able to compound and stay ahead of inflation, that's even more. We have other ways to stay ahead of inflation, but that's a pretty exciting way of doing things. And volatility is what allows that to happen.
So part of the magic of compounding, right, is the nature of how it increases, and then the increase. And you can get that multiple ways. So you could compound annually, or you could compound monthly. And if you want to look at compounding annually or monthly, let's look at a couple of numbers real quick. And if we have you take 100 grand, right, and you compound it monthly or you compound it annually. At the end of the 100 grand annually, you have 106. Nice and simple, right? At 6%. Okay.
Right.
If you compound it monthly, you got $106,167.
Whoa!
So,
just from switching from annually to monthly.
Yeah,
wow.
Not much, but $150, $200 more in 1 year. And now, how would you compound monthly? Well, you could compound monthly. Some CDs pay monthly instead of annually, but you got to be careful, because just because it says that you're earning 5%, it might be 5%, and they just pay you at the end of 1 year compared to compounding. Money markets compound monthly. And, insurance companies, their kind of version of a CD, of fixed annuity, these typically compound monthly as well.
I have seen daily on those. So it's pretty cool.
And the daily numbers would be crazy how fast that compounds. But you're saying, okay, well, that's not that big of a deal. Well, what if we go out 20 years compounding monthly compared to now, this is the same thing, exact thing. You're earning your $100,000, you're earning 6% compounded annually or 6% compounded monthly, right?
Okay.
On the annual, after 20 years, you got $320,713. So $320,000. On the monthly, you've got 331,000.
Okay. I'll take it.
So now that's actually like exactly the same percentage, 6%.
Right.
That's pretty amazing, right? And then if we
Right.
go out even further, we go to 30 years. On the annual, it's
Right.
574,000
Mhm.
compared to 602.
Wow.
And that is what we're taught. That's exactly the power of compounding. It's the same exact rate of return. The only difference is how fast it's
How
compounding, right?
often? Yeah.
And that's like $26,000 difference just because of how it compounded. And that's why it's the eighth wonder of the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we look at adding the volatility in there, where the example we used was you could earn 6% flat like these, or you could earn 10% by adding a little bit of volatility to the account. We'll explain how that works. We can go over on the next group how that would turn out compared to the flat by just, it doesn't sound like a lot more, 6 to 10, right? Doesn't sound like much, but we'll go over those numbers maybe and see
Sounds
what it
great.
could do.
Sounds great. Sounds great. And I want to just remind people in our listening audience, you listen to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today's topic is compound interest really the eighth wonder of the world? Albert Einstein said that he who understands it receives it, but he who doesn't understand it pays it. And that kind of goes along with the definition of a true investment. A true investment is something that pays you. That's what compound interest does. It pays you. Whereas, as opposed to speculation that you're hoping pays, but you don't know if it's going to or not. And if you don't, and it may not, depending what happens, all in all. But we have a book that we'd love to give you today before we go to breaks called Return on Principle by our friend David Scranton. Love to put it in your hand. Give us a call to request your free copy. If you're one of the first five callers at 800-725-7616. 800-725-7616. Get your free copy. Ask for it by name. Call now.
You're locked on to Financial Strategy with Andrew and Daniel Agemy.
Triple, I was talking to one of our clients the other day, and he had some money in the bank, and we were talking about it, and I was explaining so this has come up a lot lately, what a money market fund is.
Mm-hmm.
And people are having money set aside for something in the future, buying a house, something that they want the money available, and it's sitting there in the bank and it's literally rotting, right?
Right.
The
Yes.
hurdle rate today is kind of 7% because we're increasing the money supply by about 7% averaged, 7 to 8% average. So if you're making 8%, you're just basically staying even. That might be a little too complicated for today, but at least if you take it out of the bank and you earn 5%, you're closer to that number.
Right.
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 And he was like, wow, this is available. And I was like, yeah, compared to in 21, I had a friend that was asking, what do I do? I have money for a house. What do I do? And I said, there's not a lot you could do right now. I'd probably just, if you want a house soon, keep it in the bank. He invested in ETFs. Because
no.
markets always go up. So now he's about back to even, right? Like
21 to now?
Yeah.
13 years?
I'm sorry, 2021.
Oh, 2021. Okay.
And so they're back to even. So volatility always isn't your friend, but it depends how you use volatility. I'm Daniel Agemy.
And I'm Andrew Agemy. You're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy because people don't know what people don't know. Today's topic is compound interest. Is it really the eighth wonder of the world? We're talking about how you can increase your money the old-fashioned way through compounding interest. Daniel, that's great indication of what's going on and how speculation can really hurt somebody. Money markets are a great opportunity people have to be today that hasn't been around for about 15 years. And the compounding of that is phenomenal. Now I'm anxious, Daniel, because before we went to break, you had teased us all with, you told us the difference between compounding interest over an annual basis versus a monthly basis. And then you teased us with, well, what if we go from a 6% return without volatility in a flat with it's just a flat 6% to a 10% with volatility? So I'm anxious to dig into that. Is it time to do that yet?
Yeah, we can do that. And the 6%, right? The 6% flat, that comes where you see billboards with like a 6% CD. It's a bank trying to get you to get your money into the place, right? And then that might be 6 months and then they drop it down or something like that.
Right.
Or we
Exactly.
talked about some of these insurance things, you could get close to 6%. So that's 6% flat.
Right.
And people like that kind of thing. But let's talk about if you add some volatility to the portfolio in order to get 10%. Now, we talked about on the monthly compounding for 20 years at 6% flat. It's about 300, you invested 100 grand, 20 years, 331,000, right?
With
You
monthly
got any
compounding.
you got any guess if you just increase it from 6% to 10% with a little volatility in there? Any idea what that 331 would turn into?
My intuition says it's somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000.
This guy's got a compounding mind. 732.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, that's a big difference.
Well, it's double on its way to tripling, Daniel.
Okay.
Just
So
just a little bit more with volatility.
That's investing 100 grand, right?
Right.
Now, if we go to 30 years, and this is what typically
That was
people's
20 years.
investing life. Yeah.
That was 20 years. Okay.
Okay. So we go back to the flat. You put it in, and flat is much harder to do because it's hard to compound at 6% for this long.
Right.
But we're just this is all hypothetical stuff here.
But it's real.
Monthly,
it's real hypothetical stuff. I mean,
it works this way. We're illustrating how compounding works more so than we are talking about the numbers.
Right.
Because
the theory,
the monthly at 6% for 30 years, you turn your $100,000 into $602,000. Okay. And by taking on some volatility, increasing that up to the 10%. And this is why you and I both said we would take the 10 over the 6 with volatility every day of the week. The 10 at 30 years is $1,983,000.
Whoa. What was the other? Was it 6% over that period? What?
Yeah.
What?
So 6% flat for 30 years is 602,000.
Oh, okay. 30 years. Okay. All right. 10%.
And 10%, the volatility, the 10%, right?
Yep.
Over 30 years, you invested your 100 grand.
Yeah.
$100,000 turns into 1,983,000.
20x.
Or it's almost 4x of
three times the amount. Yeah.
So that's I'm sure that's hard for people listening to get those numbers.
Yeah.
But that's how miraculous, how magical compounding really is. Yeah. And that is something that if you've got money that's just sitting there in the bank, you need to review what your strategy is for that, because you might not care about earning money. You might have enough money. Right. But think about what that could do for somebody else. If you don't need it, then donate it to somebody that could use it.
Right.
Or make it work so you can benefit someone else's life, right? Be a good steward of that. Don't have it sitting there rotting. And that's kind of what we're trying to explain. Or if you're getting ready for retirement.
Right.
You had 2 years where the markets did nothing. Yeah. You could have been compounding that like we're talking about if you had switched that investing focus from a speculation or growth type to a compounding or renewable resource type.
Right. Right. And Daniel, that's great. And let me just say to those in our listening audience, Daniel's talking about doing this, and that's important. And we can help people with that, but we can't help everybody with that. We work with people, it's not that you have to have $5 million to work with us, but we can take south of $500,000 or south of $500,000. Okay. If you got $10,000 in the bank, love you, but we're not going to be able to help you with this. And so just to let you know the parameters, but this stuff is still true. It's still available out there. You can do it and, move forward with it. And you're listening to Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy, because people don't know what people don't know. Today's topic is compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world. Today's paper that we're giving out today along with the show that goes along with the show is passive income. Passive income helps you be able to understand how this income stuff works, how it compounds, and how it can work for you. Call 800-725-7616 for your free copy. Daniel, as we're finishing up, we only have a few minutes left in the show today. And, you've done a great job with this and explain this to people. But, I want to take a few moments and speak to our clients who are listening to this show today, right? Because our clients are already this is all happening for them. And, if you're our client listening to the show today, one of the things I want to say to you that this compounding does with what Daniel was just referring to is that $100,000 over that 30-year period of time turns into almost $2 million. And you might say, well, I'm not going to live that long. Well, if you're 65 years old, you certainly could live to be 95 years old. And nobody has on their bucket list where you want to go through life and then end up in a convalescent home and have no money. Well, you need money to keep you at home. You want to stay at home. And so that's why it's important to be able to compound your money, be able to do it in a way that you can have money, all the money you need during your retirement, but then still keep you at home from that standpoint. And that's what we do with this. This is a way to keep you up with inflation. So earlier on in the show, I talked about one of our clients over the past 3 years since they've become a client of ours, that they've averaged over 8% a year in their portfolio from this compounding of the dividends and the interest. And that's 8% each year. Now, we're not guaranteeing that at all. We're not saying that's going to happen to you, but we're just saying this is historically what has happened. And so inflation has not been 8% per year for all the things you buy in retirement from that standpoint. So we're ahead of inflation on that front, kind of like what happened in the 80s, where inflation, people who were getting interest rates of, 15, 16% didn't care that inflation was 10, 11, 12 because they were still ahead of it. And that's what's happening with you as our client. We're helping you stay ahead of that. We're buying you more chickens with those eggs. We're buying you, when those chickens are on sale, they're in their skinny chickens on steroids. We're buying those for you to help you do this. And this is allowing us to provide you with a great retirement because of this compounding that's going on. And, any of my clients, you listening as a client or others of my clients, I'm always talking about spend your money. I'd rather see you spend your money, you spend your eggs rather than your children or others spend your eggs from that standpoint. And, it's a great thing. It's a true investment where you're getting paid. There's not speculation. You're getting paid. You work too hard for your money to not have your money work hard for you.
And embrace that volatility, because the volatility, as we show in this scenario, it allows it to compound better. If it's flat, you're not going to do as good. And 2024 is most likely going to be a volatile year. So embrace the volatility because it helps the compounding grow even better.
Right, exactly. So when we're having our reviews and you see maybe that your account balance is maybe down, remember it's still producing those eggs. And if your account balance is down, that means we're getting chickens on sale, that chickens that are on steroids on sale, so that we're going to get bigger, better eggs and be able to increase your money that way, to be able to add certainty to your portfolio in these uncertain times. We are so blessed to be able to bring this educational show to you today, Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy, because people don't know what people don't know. And thank you for spending some time with us today. Today's topic has been the compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world. Is it really? And if you have questions, please call us at 800-725-7616 and tell us what your question is. Hit us on the internet on agemy.com. Our last name is spelled with the two words Agemy, AGEMY.com. And you can pose a question on there to us, and we'll be glad to get back to you and get you that information, whether we answer on the air or not. And with that, you also can listen to this show and other shows anywhere that you listen to podcasts. So look for Financial Strategies with Andrew and Daniel Agemy. Today, as we close out today, we have this book, Return on Principle, from our friend David Scranton, with all kinds of initials after his name, be able to help you, educate you further on these topics. Speaking about books, Daniel, I want to include that compounding stuff in my book that will be coming out later this year. So let's make note of that. But with that, call for your free copy of Return on Principle by David Scranton, 800-725-7616. For the next 5 first-time callers, 800-725-7616. Call for your free book. We look forward to being able to come to you next time as well. And in the meantime, remember, if you want your retirement to be stress-free, invest for the I, not the G.